Imagine Grace. She lives in Accra, Ghana. Each day she weaves through the congested, fume-choked traffic, a basin of chilled water bottles balanced expertly on her head. For 12 arduous hours under the West African sun, she calls out to drivers, her voice competing with the blare of horns and the rumble of engines, all for a daily income that barely surpasses $1.50. She breathes exhaust fumes, her feet ache, her future uncertain. Yet, every Sunday, without fail, Grace takes 12% of this meager income, a sum that could buy food or medicine, and willingly, even joyfully, gives it to Pastor William. Pastor William, a man who preaches salvation and prosperity, who drives a gleaming Mercedes, whose belt buckle is shaped like a conspicuous dollar sign. Why? Why would Grace, a rational woman struggling for survival, make such a choice? Is she simply irrational, easily deceived by a charismatic showman? Or is there something far more profound at play, something economically strategic, even if unconsciously so, that binds her to this church, to this pastor? This isn't an isolated incident. It's a scene repeated millions of times, in myriad forms, across the globe, and it stands in stark contrast to the dominant narrative we often hear in the West, the narrative of religion's inevitable decline, of empty pews and a secularizing world. But what if that narrative is incomplete, or even misleading? Welcome to CEO's Library, the 1% bookshelf, where we distill complex concepts from top business and personal development books into actionable insights for executives, leaders, and aspiring entrepreneurs. Today, we're diving deep, not into a dusty theological tome, but into a work of sharp, incisive economic analysis. Paul Seabright's groundbreaking book, The Divine Economy: How Religions Compete for Wealth, Power, and People. Forget everything you thought you knew about religion as a purely spiritual or cultural phenomenon. We're putting on our economist hats, our strategist goggles, and examining religion as a fiercely competitive global industry, a multi-trillion-dollar force shaping economies, societies, and individual lives. Over the next 30 minutes, you'll discover why the widespread belief that religion is dying is on a global scale, statistically flawed. We'll unpack how successful faiths operate with the strategic savvy of modern tech giants, utilizing a powerful platform model to build fiercely loyal communities and command immense resources. And yes, we'll show you how you can steal some of these strategies for your own organization. We'll explore why seemingly irrational beliefs and costly rituals are not liabilities, but often crucial assets in the competitive religious marketplace. And we'll shed light on the powerful, often hidden, connections between religion, political power, and economic growth, along with the inherent risks involved. Prepare to gain a powerful new lens for leadership, strategy, and understanding the intricate dance of human motivation in our complex world. Most headlines, particularly those emanating from Western media, paint a picture of religion in retreat. We see stories of declining church attendance in Europe, the rise of the nuns, those claiming no religious affiliation in North America. Empty cathedrals are repurposed into apartments or concert halls. Secularism, it seems, is on an unstoppable march. But Paul Seabright, in The Divine Economy, challenges us to look beyond these regional snapshots. He argues that this narrative of universal decline is a classic case of statistical illusion, a misunderstanding of the broader global dynamics at play. So what's really happening when we zoom out and look at the worldwide religious landscape? The first key insight Seabright offers to dismantle this myth is a concept familiar to statisticians but often overlooked in popular discourse: Simpson's paradox. Imagine you're looking at batting averages for two baseball players over 2 years. Player A might have a higher average than player B in both year 1 and year 2, yet player B could have a higher overall average when both years are combined. How? It depends on the number of at-bats in each year. Similarly, while Christianity's global share of the population saw a slight decline over the 20th century, this wasn't primarily because it was losing members to secularism on a massive scale. Instead, it was largely due to slower population growth in its traditional strongholds, Europe and North America, compared to faster-growing regions elsewhere. In fact, when you adjust for demographics, Christianity often gained ground relative to what demographic predictions would suggest, especially in rapidly growing regions like sub-Saharan Africa and parts of Asia. Islam, too, has shown robust growth globally. Crucially, Seabright points out that much of this growth, for both major religions, has come at the expense of local, indigenous, or folk religions, rather than a wholesale conversion from secularism back to faith, or vice versa, in a straightforward way. The religious marketplace is shifting, not simply shrinking. This brings us to Seabright's central thesis, echoing an idea from an unlikely source, Adam Smith, the father of modern economics. Over 2 centuries ago, Smith suggested in The Wealth of Nations that religions, much like businesses, compete for adherents and resources. Seabright takes this idea and turbocharges it for the 21st century. He argues that modern religious organizations function remarkably like firms in a competitive market. They need to acquire resources, donations, volunteers, talented clergy. They manage complex operations, often on a global scale. They strive to motivate their staff, a mix of paid professionals and unpaid, highly committed volunteers, and they compete fiercely, not just with other religious denominations, but increasingly with secular alternatives, entertainment industries, self-help gurus, community sports leagues, political movements, even just the allure of a quiet Sunday morning lie-in. Their messages, their rituals, their organizational structures, and even their core beliefs often adapt and evolve in response to these competitive pressures and the incentives they face. Seabright recounts a fascinating anecdote about the early Methodists in England. They initially faced fierce opposition, even violence, from established Anglican clergy and local mobs, but their persistence, their organized structure, and their message of personal piety and social responsibility eventually allowed them to carve out a significant niche, forcing the established church to, in some ways, up its own game. A powerful contemporary example of this competitive adaptation is the explosive growth of Pentecostalism worldwide. Pentecostal churches, with their emphasis on direct spiritual experience, vibrant worship, community support, and often a message of empowerment and prosperity, have proven incredibly successful in diverse cultural contexts, particularly in rapidly urbanizing societies in Africa, Latin America, and Asia. They often fill a void left by more traditional hierarchical denominations or by fledgling secular state institutions that struggle to provide social safety nets or a sense of belonging in sprawling, anonymous cities. They are, in economic terms, highly effective competitors offering a compelling value proposition to millions. So what are the takeaways for you as a leader, an executive, an entrepreneur? First, and perhaps most critically, look beyond the headlines. Don't let Western-centric assumptions or simplistic narratives cloud your understanding of global market shifts and deep-seated social trends. Be wary of Simpson's paradox in your own business data. Are you looking at aggregate numbers that mask critical regional or demographic variations in performance or preference? Dive deeper. Second, recognize your unseen competition. Your business isn't just competing with the company across the street or the similar product online. It's competing for your customers' finite time, attention, loyalty, and resources. This includes deeply ingrained cultural and social institutions, like religions, that command immense loyalty and shape worldviews. Understanding these broader competitive landscapes can reveal untapped opportunities or hidden threats. And third, the iron law for both divine and earthly economies: adapt or die. Just as successful religious movements have constantly innovated and tailored their offerings to meet the evolving needs and desires of their target market, so too must your organization. Complacency, resting on the laurels of past success, is a dangerous path when the environment is constantly shifting. The ability to sense change, interpret it accurately, and respond with agility is paramount. Now let's return to Grace in Accra, diligently setting aside 12% of her hard-earned, meager income for Pastor William. We've established that religions compete, but what exactly is Grace buying with that 12%? It's certainly not a guaranteed miracle cure for her daughter's persistent cough, nor an instant ticket out of poverty. So, if it's not a straightforward transaction for divine intervention, what is the product? This is where Paul Seabright introduces his most powerful and illuminating concept. Religions aren't just selling beliefs, they are building and maintaining incredibly effective platforms. What does he mean by a platform, and how does this idea explain the enduring success and deep loyalty these organizations command? In modern business parlance, we think of platforms as entities like Facebook, Amazon, Airbnb, or Uber, businesses that don't primarily sell their own products or services, but rather facilitate valuable interactions and transactions between other parties that might not otherwise occur. Facebook connects friends, Amazon connects buyers and sellers, Airbnb connects hosts and guests. Seabright argues that religious organizations pioneered this model millennia before the digital age. At their core, successful religions create and sustain powerful social platforms. They build communities. These aren't just abstract spiritual communities, they are tangible networks providing a wide array of services. They are platforms for social connection, helping people find friends, spouses, and a sense of belonging in an often impersonal world. They are platforms for trust building. Shared beliefs and values can create a shorthand for knowing who is one of us, who can be relied upon in business dealings or personal crises. They offer mutual support, acting as informal insurance networks, providing help in times of sickness, unemployment, or bereavement. Think of the church congregation rallying around a family that has lost their home to a fire, and crucially, they provide a shared identity, a sense of we-ness that is profoundly important for human well-being. A key distinction Seabright makes is that, unlike simple service providers where the customer is a passive recipient, in a religious platform, the members are the value. Their participation, their commitment, their interactions with each other are what create the platform's worth. Think of St. Paul's famous analogy of the church as a body with many parts, each essential for the functioning of the whole. People don't just want to receive services, they often want to contribute, to be needed, to be part of something larger than themselves. This co-creation of value is a hallmark of strong platforms. Grace isn't just a customer of Pastor William's church, she's an active participant. Her presence, her tithe, her faith contribute to the collective strength and vibrancy of that community, which in turn offers her benefits. This brings us to an intriguing aspect of religious platforms: high commitment mechanisms. Why do religions often demand significant sacrifices of time, money, like Grace's tithe, or behavior dietary restrictions, specific dress codes, arduous pilgrimages? Seabright explains, drawing on economic signaling theory, that these costly signals are not just arbitrary burdens, they serve vital functions. Firstly, they act as filtering mechanisms. By demanding significant upfront investment, religions can screen out free riders or those with low commitment, ensuring that the community is composed of genuinely dedicated individuals. This builds trust and enhances the quality and reliability of the network. If everyone in your prayer group has made a significant sacrifice to be there, you're more likely to trust them and invest in them. Secondly, these commitments create high switching costs. Once you've invested years of your life, a significant portion of your income, and built your entire social network within a particular religious community, the cost, both financial and emotional, of leaving can be immense. This fosters loyalty and stability within the platform. Grace's 12% isn't just a payment, it's an investment that deepens her bond with the community, making it a more reliable source of support and identity for her. We see parallels to this in the secular world. Think of strong corporate cultures where employees feel a deep sense of belonging and shared purpose, often cultivated through rigorous onboarding, shared challenges, and unique internal language. Or consider powerful brand communities like the Harley-Davidson Owners Group, HOG. Owning a Harley is just the entry ticket. The real value for many HOG members comes from the rallies, the shared identity, the brotherhood, the rituals, and the language that create a deep loyalty far transcending the mere functionality of a motorcycle. These are, in essence, secular platforms built on similar principles of shared identity and high commitment. The applications for leaders here are potent. First, strive to build a genuine community, not just a customer base or workforce. How can your organization facilitate meaningful connections between your users, your customers, or your employees? What relationships does your product, service, or company culture enable and nurture? Think beyond the purely transactional. Second, understand the real value you provide. What intangible needs, belonging, identity, trust, meaning, purpose, does your organization, or could it, fulfill for its stakeholders? Often, the most loyal customers or employees are drawn by these deeper, less obvious benefits. Third, consider how you can leverage high commitment mechanisms, not necessarily financial, but mechanisms that signal and reward deep engagement. This could be through challenging but rewarding projects, exclusive access for highly engaged members, public recognition of contributions, or even well-designed onboarding rituals that foster a sense of initiation and shared identity. How can you create a core group of highly engaged, deeply committed stakeholders who become advocates and co-creators of value? And finally, actively cultivate positive network effects. How can you design your offerings or your community so that its value increases for everyone as more committed and engaged people join? It's not just about quantity, but the quality of participation. Okay, so religious platforms build strong, committed communities. That explains much of their resilience and appeal. But what about the content? What about the seemingly strange beliefs, the elaborate mythologies, the sometimes demanding moral codes? Why follow leaders who might become entangled in messy political dealings, or tragically, sometimes become embroiled in scandal? And why do narratives of suffering and even defeat hold such immense and enduring power over human hearts and minds? This leads us to another critical service provided by these religious platforms, the power of narrative. Religions, Seabright argues, excel at providing comprehensive, master narratives. These are stories that give meaning to individual lives, that explain the inexplicable, particularly suffering and death, and that offer a sense of purpose and an individual's place within the vastness of the cosmos. This provision of meaning is a core and deeply valuable service of the religious platform. Transcendental religions, in particular, those that posit a reality beyond the immediate material world, are adept at framing suffering not as a random, meaningless event, but as part of a larger divine plan, a trial leading to eventual salvation, redemption, or enlightenment. This ability to contextualize hardship within a hopeful, overarching story can be an incredibly powerful psychological balm. Grace, facing daily struggle, may find in Pastor Williams' sermons a narrative that imbues her suffering with meaning, offering hope for a better future, if not in this life, then in the next, or for her children. Interestingly, Seabright suggests that strong, explicit belief isn't always the prerequisite for joining a religious community. Rather, belief often develops after immersion and participation in the community and its rituals. This echoes Blaise Pascal's famous wager, where he advised the skeptic to act as if they believed. To attend Mass, take holy water, and genuine belief would follow. For many, initial assent to core tenets, a willingness to participate, is more important than deep, nuanced theological conviction. Doctrines, in this sense, often function more as identity markers, badges of belonging, than as fully internalized philosophical positions for every member. Repeating a creed together, observing specific dietary laws, or wearing particular attire signals who is in and who is out. Strengthening group cohesion. However, the very success, legitimacy, and trust derived from building these powerful communities and crafting compelling narratives make religious platforms incredibly attractive to, and sometimes vulnerable to, political forces. Adam Smith recognized this cycle centuries ago. Religious groups gain moral authority, political leaders seek to align with that authority to bolster their own legitimacy, and religions gain influence and protection in return. We see modern iterations of this constantly, such as the complex relationship between evangelical Christians and political figures like Donald Trump in the United States. This entanglement can offer short-term benefits to both sides: votes and moral cover for politicians, access and favorable policies for religious groups. But Seabright warns that it carries significant long-term risks for the religion. If a faith becomes too closely identified with a particular political party or ideology, it risks losing its broader moral authority, alienating members who don't share those political views, and ultimately damaging its core brand of universality or transcendence. Furthermore, the unchecked power derived from charismatic leadership and the deep trust placed in religious figures by their communities can tragically create environments ripe for abuse. Seabright touches on this sensitive issue, discussing historical instances like the Iwerne camps in the UK, where a highly respected evangelical network became a site of systematic abuse. This isn't unique to religion. Unchecked authority in any institution, corporate, political, educational, can lead to similar devastating outcomes. The trust that platforms depend on is a fragile thing. Underpinning all of this, Seabright subtly integrates an evolutionary psychology perspective. Humans, it seems, are cognitively predisposed to certain ways of thinking that make religious frameworks particularly resonant. We are narrative creatures, wired to understand the world through stories. We have a tendency towards agency detection, seeing intention and purpose even in random events. We are also prolific social learners, keen to imitate the behavior of prestigious or successful individuals within our group, a trait known as over-imitation. Religions, perhaps through millennia of cultural evolution, have become adept at leveraging these innate human tendencies, providing frameworks that satisfy our need for meaning, community, and guidance. For leaders, the implications are profound. First, you must master your organization's narrative. What is the story you are telling about your company's purpose, its values, its journey? A compelling narrative can inspire deep commitment, foster resilience during challenging times, and unite your team around a shared vision. Without it, you're just selling a product or a service. With it, you're offering meaning. Second, consider the importance of authenticity and, where appropriate, political neutrality. While engaging with policymakers is often necessary, be wary of deep political entanglements that could alienate significant portions of your customer base, employee pool, or stakeholders. Perceived partisanship can erode trust and narrow your appeal. Authenticity to your core mission and values is your strongest anchor. Third, and this cannot be overstated, institute robust systems for transparency, feedback, and accountability, especially where charismatic leadership or strong community bonds confer significant power. Power, even in the most well-intentioned organizations, needs checks and balances to prevent abuse and maintain the trust that is your most valuable asset. And finally, develop an awareness of the cognitive biases, like our susceptibility to compelling narratives or deference to authority, that influence belief and decision-making, both within your organization and in your target market. Understanding these human tendencies can help you communicate more effectively and lead more ethically. So, as we draw towards the close of our exploration into the divine economy, it's clear that Paul Seabright offers a powerfully unconventional, yet incredibly insightful lens through which to view one of humanity's oldest and most enduring institutions. Religion, far from being a quaint relic of a bygone era or simply fading into irrelevance, is revealed as a dynamic, adaptive, and fiercely competitive force in the global human marketplace. Let's recap the main takeaways for you as leaders and strategic thinkers. Firstly, religion competes. It's crucial to understand these powerful global forces not just as cultural phenomena, but through an economic lens. They are organizations that strategize, adapt, innovate, and compete for resources and loyalty. Much like businesses and their influence on global trends, consumer behavior, and political landscapes is undeniable. Secondly, platforms build enduring loyalty. The platform model, pioneered by religious organizations long before Silicon Valley, demonstrates that creating strong, high-trust communities that meet deep-seated human needs for belonging, support, and shared identity is a cornerstone of lasting success. Focus on the relationships you enable. And thirdly, narrative is power, but it must be handled with profound care. Master narratives provide meaning, drive commitment, and can unite people towards a common purpose. However, the influence and authority this confers demand strong ethical frameworks and robust accountability systems to prevent misuse and maintain the integrity of the community. We encourage you to take these principles and reflect on how they apply to your own organization, your team, or your personal leadership journey. How can you build a stronger, more engaged community around your brand or mission? What is the core narrative you are communicating, and how effectively does it resonate? And critically, what systems do you have in place to ensure that power and influence are wielded responsibly and that trust is continuously nurtured and protected? To dive deeper into these fascinating insights and explore the rich tapestry of examples and analyses Paul Seabright provides, we highly recommend reading his book, The Divine Economy: How Religions Compete for Wealth, Power, and People. You can find the Amazon link to purchase a copy of the full book or the audiobook in our episode description. Don't forget to visit ceoslibrary.com for the full transcript of today's episode, along with accompanying visualizations and more resources to help you apply these insights. Thank you for joining us on CEO's Library, the 1% Bookshelf. Tune in next time as we unlock more wisdom from the world's most impactful books to help you lead, innovate, and thrive.